What is going on, everybody? I am AJ, and I'm going to give you guys a DraftKings breakdown for UFC Fight Night, Gane versus Rozenstruik. If you guys aren't already aware, if I could get that out, I do a FanDuel article. I actually post that with RotoWire, so if you want my take on the FanDuel side of things, plugging RotoWire right now, I will have that out. That is probably already actually out at the time you're listening to this, as I'm releasing this here on Thursday. Those are typically posted on Wednesday, if not maybe Thursday at the latest, depending on when they release the salaries, which as of recently, it's been later on in the week. So we'll see exactly what shakes out. But we're here to talk about DraftKings, right? And we're here to talk about as pertains to the UFC Fight Night, Gane versus Rozenstruik card. And I got to say, just first glance at these fights, there's definitely a lot of spots, and I've already had people reach out to me. There's definitely a lot of spots where there's not maybe as much scoring upside as we saw on the last week's card, but there's still money to be won out there, right? In these big prize pool contests, we'll talk about some cash games as well. Big prizes all the time in MMA. I'm so glad the sport has grown tremendously. Obviously, the fight nights don't generate as much money DraftKings-wise as, say, the pay-per-views do, but there's still plenty of money to be won out there regardless, and we're going to talk about the thing together. So let's get into business, shall we? So some plays that are sticking out to me, we'll go in categories. We'll talk about cash games first. For cash games, it's really hard for me not to like Ciryl Gane at his price point. I've actually got the salaries pulled up on my other screen here. You can't see it, but I was unable to drag it over. But yeah, Ciryl Gane in the main event, $9,000, big favorite. I think it's a good style matchup for him. He has 5 rounds to work with if need be. And he also has one of the better inside the distance lines on the card, plus 100 right now per 5 dimes. Obviously, that's not elite. Like, that's not the biggest inside distance line on the card, but it's still a good inside distance line nonetheless. I think he's a better striker than Rozenstruik. I think he actually could have success in the grappling realm. We've seen Gane impose his grappling. He's a pretty good grappler, especially for a guy that, comes from a striking background. I'd say he's actually very good considering those circumstances. So I think it's pretty much just Gane's fight to lose. That's why I like him in cash. I'm not going to just, say that Rozenstruik's the better cash play because, again, like I said in my main breakdown, I'd be picking Rozenstruik out of fear. We're just coming off of a heavyweight main event where the underdog heavyweight went out there and won by knockout. That is recency bias, though. It's not to say that it can't happen here, but again, what happens more often than not? Let's not forget 2 fight nights ago, we had another heavyweight headliner, right? We had Volkov and Overeem. The favorite went out there and won, right? So heavyweight variance is a real thing, but I'm not taking it to the point to where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be picking the better fighter here just because I think that the other guy might get a knockout. I favor the fighter that I think is better, and that's who I think Gane is. No disrespect to Rozenstruik. Rozenstruik's a tremendous fighter. I just think Gane has him beat everywhere. I think Rozenstruik is fine as well. I prefer Gane. Rozenstruik, the good thing about rostering him in DraftKings is I think his main path to victory here is to win by knockout. And his price point, we're looking at 7,200. I mean, that is interesting, no doubt about it. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good main event to target overall. My preferred play is certainly Gane, and I do like Gane for cash. As do I for Magomed Ankalaev. We're sitting here 9,300. He's another fighter that is a big favorite, and he has a very reasonable inside the distance line, minus 115. And yeah, I think it's a good style matchup for him. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but I actually bet him at minus 275. I think that he's got Krylov pretty much beat everywhere. Krylov's definitely a stiff test. He's a veteran. He's fairly well-rounded. But I just think that Ankalaev's the better technical fighter, better on the feet, better grappler. And I think it's kind of his fight to lose. So I like Ankalaev in cash because he's a big betting favorite, because he's got a good wins inside the distance line. And, I do think he could have success with the grappling here. We've seen Krylov taken down so many times against OSP. We've seen him give up a lot of position on the ground, like he was mounted against Johnny Walker against OSP. So I think Ankalaev could pretty much control wherever this fight goes. And we see now that DraftKings is rewarding these grapplers, right, for going out there, not only landing takedowns, but getting control time. And Ankalaev does have solid control in top position, and he's shown to be a finisher while in top position. He has a lot of ground and pound finishes prior to coming to the UFC. And I don't think that Krylov is the most defensively sound grappler once he's on his back. So I do like Ankalaev for cash games. Again, there's always an argument to be made for both sides, for really any fighter when we're talking about a UFC slate. It is a light heavyweight fight, just like the heavyweights. There's some added variance just based off the fact that they're big guys. They hit hard. I don't think Krylov is terrible in tournaments. For me, if I'm making 150 lineups, taking a few shots on Krylov, I don't think it's the worst risk that I could take. But my preferred play is definitely Ankalaev here. And I'm not going to be picking Krylov just out of fear. I'm not going to be, having more exposure to Krylov than Ankalaev on DraftKings out of fear, because again, I just think that Ankalaev's the better fighter, the better play. That is ultimately why I'm picking him with conviction. I am doing it with conviction, a lot of it. Enough said there. I'll actually talk about now the fight that was most recently booked. This isn't going into the category. I'm going a little bit off the grid here, just taking a sidestep off the cash games, because those are my two favorite cash game favorites, are Ankalaev and Gane. We'll get to some others, but the fight between Oliveira is very interesting. Oliveira and his short notice opponent. I'm going to try and pronounce this gentleman's name correctly. Ramazan Kurmagomedov. Yes. So this is going to be a mid-range fight. This is a fight that I think Oliveira has shown to be one of those guys that is kind of finish or be finished. He's shown to, not fight all the time with the best game plan, right? We even saw that in his last fight against Shavkat Rakhmonov. That was a fight that I believe he could have won. But again, his defensive grappling has been a liability. That was the only fight where it looked shaky. It looked shaky against Max Griffin. Other fights in the past as well, like against Gunnar Nelson, against Gilbert Burns. These are good fighters and everything, but Oliveira has definitely shown holes in his game. And Ramazan, I like him. Very talented fighter. He's definitely not as experienced as Oliveira. He definitely is taking this fight on short notice, obviously, which is a risk. But Oliveira creates enough chaos. There is enough volatility, I think, within this matchup to where I do like this fight more for tournaments than I do for cash, due to the volatility reasons. But I like it for tournaments because I do think that there's some upside here in terms of getting a finish. Like I say, Oliveira has kind of shown to be finish or be finished. Yeah, I mean, he's had his fair share of going to decisions and whatnot. But yeah, I do. This isn't a fight I want to go all in on. I do prefer the fight, say, between Knight and Menifield for GPPs that we'll get to. But this is a fight that I do like to some extent for GPPs. But just for GPPs, I'm not too crazy about it for cash. So we'll see exactly how it shakes out. But that should be a fun fight. Back to the cash game plays. Yeah, so again, Ankalaev and Gane are the two favorites that I like the most. I just feel like they're the safest plays in terms of like betting odds. We got Gane in the main event. They both have upside at grapple. They both have upside at finish. So I'm pretty sold on those guys. I'm not so big on, say, Angela Hill. Well, really in any format, because while I think she wins, I actually bet her to win by decision earlier today at the time of recording this. Her upside for DraftKings in this matchup, especially with the new scoring update where it's not so friendly to the strikers, like I just don't really think that there's a strong chance that Angela Hill goes out there and puts up a really strong DraftKings score. I mean, I think she's unlikely to grapple here. The grappling is actually Yoder's path to victory. She does land a lot of volume, no doubt about it. But again, with that scoring system that DraftKings has since implemented, it's not as kind to these volume-based strikers, assuming you're not Max Holloway just going out there and fighting at a crazy pace, over 400 strikes for 5 rounds. Remember, this is only a 3-round fight. But basically what I'm trying to say is I just think that Hill has to overcome many hurdles, and she's also very unlikely to finish this fight per the betting odds, that for me, it's just a pass on DraftKings. And maybe I'm completely off on this, but at the end of the day, I got to look in the mirror and be okay with the decisions that I make. And this is one where, despite me liking Hill in the matchup, despite me picking her to win, and even betting her to win by decision, it's just a play that I want no part of in DraftKings. And we'll see what happens. I hope that she goes out there and responds in a big way. Ashley Yoder is a very tough opponent. So we'll see. It should be a very interesting fight. I'm looking forward to it. So Hill is like my fade, right? Hill is one of my fades. I'm not too interested in her for cash or GPPs. And I just want to make those stands. Even though we have a little bit less fights on this card than, say, we did last week, there is still, some stands that I want to take. And in being underweight, fading Hill is one that I personally would like to take. As will another one with Alexander Hernandez. He's another fighter that I want to fade, really both on FanDuel and DraftKings. And it's because similar to Hill, I don't think he's got a strong chance to win inside the distance per my eyes, per what research tells me. The odds back that up as well. He's plus 300 to win inside the distance per 5 dimes. Again, it's not like it's impossible, but when we're weighing the odds here, Moises is a fighter, his opponent, Alexander Hernandez, who has never been finished in 18 pro fights. Hernandez, I would say, is a very talented fighter, but I don't really classify him as like the most dangerous finisher. I know he's coming off a very impressive performance against Chris Gritzmacher. I bet him in that spot. I thought it was a great matchup for him. This matchup is much different, for my eyes at least. Moises is tough. They're both young up-and-comers. They both train at good camps. I think they're both going to test each other. I don't really see, even though I'm favoring Hernandez to win, why I'm kind of off of him for DraftKings is, again, I think it's unlikely he finishes. And also, I think it's kind of unlikely he dominates this fight. Again, I favor him in multiple facets of the fight. I think he's a better athlete. I think he's a better striker and a better wrestler. And that should be enough for him to win. But it's not like he just really blows Moises out of the water in these categories. We saw Moises, he's a capable wrestler. He took down Bobby Green with a power double leg against the fence last time out. He's shown to land, multiple takedowns over the course of 15 minutes, like against Kurt Hollabaugh. He's a very threatening submission grappler. So Alexander Hernandez might just be like, I'm not even going to play around with this guy on the feet. He might just be like, I'm going to keep this fight on the feet where I'm probably going to win the aggregate of the exchanges. But again, when we're talking about this new scoring system update with DraftKings, and I keep saying it because, we're so accustomed to the old format. We've just been used to the format for so long. I have to remind myself about it too. So, with a guy in Hernandez, who I am sold on him winning, and why I was big on him against Gritzmacher, I thought he was live to get the finish there and grapple. This is just personally a spot where I would like to be underweight to him. And that's just a stand that I'm okay with taking at the end of the day. And we'll see exactly what happens, right? But yeah, he's just a fighter that I would like to be underweight to. So those would be my two fades if I were to pick two fades. Out of respect for prioritization for the rest of the card. There's some other fighters that we'll get to that I'm not super big on either, but if I had to pick two fades for this card, they would be Alexander Hernandez and Angela Hill. On the flip side, for cash game underdogs, going back to the cash game build, I think that both underdogs in those matchups are in play. Not that I think that they're the most intriguing cash game options, but they are cash game options nonetheless. Ashley Yoder, her path to victory is grappling. So in theory, she's got, at least a higher floor than a lot of the fighters in her price range. She's priced really cheap. She's only $7K. The fight's very likely to go to distance. And when you're able to put her in the lineup, you're able to afford a lot of the other fighters that you feel really confident in win. Now, ideally, we would want 6 wins in our cash game lineup. But out of respect for prioritization, if I have to pay down to get to pay down for Ashley Yoder in my cash lineup, if it means getting Ankalaev and Gane in my lineup, I'll do it, right? So we'll see. We obviously have some time here in the meantime. Things can change, but that's where my head is at right now. I'm definitely considering Yoder. I'm considering Moises. Any of these underdogs that I think, I'm pretty sold on Hill winning the matchup, but like any underdogs like Montana De La Rosa that we'll get to for GPPs as well, that have a legit chance to win per the betting odds, per analysis, I'm willing to take a chance on them on this particular slate. I am also considering Sabina Mazo as a cash game play. Again, I prefer, and I know she's a favorite, but I prefer her over most of the favorites in cash, except for, again, Ankalaev and Gane because of her win odds. And I just tend to think it's a good style matchup for her. And unlike Hill, I do think she has a bit more upside here, despite being mainly a striker. I just think she's facing a woman in Alexis Davis that she should just be a lot sharper than. She's 13 years younger than her. And I do think there's a possibility for her to finish. I don't think it's the most likely thing, but again, if I'm weighing the probabilities here, and if I'm, looking at all the fighters on this card, I don't feel great paying up for Alex Caceres. And then it's like, what else am I left with? There's just a lot of fights that I want to target in GPPs, but not necessarily ones that I'm crazy about targeting for cash games. So, but even on the flip side of that, Alexis Davis, the fight is likely to go to distance. She's another underdog that, even though I prefer Yoder over her in cash, again, the fight, the odds say it's likely to go to distance. Even in some of her losses, Davis has scored fine because she is a grappler, because her path to victory is to get takedowns and get top control, which she's very good at, by the way. And we have seen Mazo taken down and controlled. Now, granted, I think she's developing, certainly. but it is still a path to victory nonetheless, right? So again, that's kind of where my head's at for cash. It's great when we have these cards where there's, you know, a fighter that's priced at 7,400 and they're in a pick'em fight, or they're the favorite even. That's great. They're like insta plays for me in cash, basically. But on a card like this, where there's not so many obvious choices, this is what I'm thinking, right? And we got to work with what we got at the end of the day. So that's what I'm kind of looking at in cash, as will the aforementioned Montana De La Rosa. I think she should be favored here. We'll see where these odds shift. At the time of recording this, she's still, you know, around like plus 115 or so, depending on what book you look at. I wouldn't be shocked to see her be the favorite by fight time. I even better at this point in time. So I do like her for cash. I think it's likely to go to distance. I don't think Buenos Aires can armbar her. I wrote up an analysis as to why. I don't think that's going to be the most likely thing. And I think Montana is the better striker and the better grappler of the two. So that's why I think she should be favored. Those are the most compelling facets of the fight, if you ask me, assuming that the cardio checks out and the durability holds up, which I think that will be the case here. Montana is very tough, and she now is training at Denver, Colorado altitude. So I think that these certain factors should help her out and help her win. So she's not only an underdog for cash that I like, but let's segue into GPPs. I actually like her as a GPP underdog as well. For that reason, I just think she's one of the underdogs that I feel strongest about win. And I do think that while I think she's unlikely to finish here, I think she's a decent candidate to go out there, get takedowns, and get significant top control time. Buena Silva is very content with laying on her back and playing guard. And she just isn't the best scrambler off of her back. So I think that Montana, she could kind of just rest in top position there, get some top control time, land some ground and pound, and that could potentially lead to a decent DraftKings score. Remember, we're not even paying that much for her. She's very reasonably priced on DraftKings at only 7,800. So she's definitely an underdog that I want some exposure to. She's one of the more intriguing options to me on this slate. For some other GPP underdog options, you know, ones that are sticking out to me, Kevin Crume is another one, just because it's a lot to do with Alex Caceres. He's been to 6 split decisions in the UFC. We've seen him get his back taken multiple times. He doesn't always fight with a ton of urgency for 15 minutes. So I kind of feel like I'm almost breaking down a Bobby Green fight. It's like when you see the guy as a big favorite, it's almost like it makes you a little bit intrigued to at least give the underdog a look, to say maybe like, hey, let's, you know, consider this guy, you know, for DraftKings or something. I was thinking about this. I was thinking the same thing when Thiago Moises was booked against Bobby Green. And again, regardless of the result, that's just an example I'd like to give. But yeah, I mean, basically it's like with Crume, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. I think that Caceres is the better fighter from what my eyes tell me. But then again, he has a tendency of, you know, he had like Chase Hooper hurt. He had Austin Springer hurt. He had Martin Bravo hurt, and he chose not to finish all of them at the particular points in time when he had him hurt. So again, Caceres is not a type of guy I feel the most confident backing as a big favorite for those reasons. He tends to fight very competitively. So with Crume, again, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, he showed off his submission skills in that debut. Caceres gets his back taken often. I'm willing to take a chance on him. Maybe it just completely whiffs, but he's an underdog that I'm willing to take a chance on. He has a legitimate chance to win, despite what the odds say, just based off Caceres' tendencies, the research that I've done, and he is one of the more intriguing underdogs for me, in my personal estimation, on DraftKings. Some other ones that we'll get to, you know, I also like Pedro Munoz against Jimmy Rivera for DraftKings. Again, it's more so to do with just I think he's another underdog that I think has a solid chance to win relative to the rest of the card. Solid chance to win, but also could put up a reasonable DraftKings score because he's a candidate to finish. I just don't feel great about rostering fighters like Vince Cachero, you know, Maxime Grisham that are underdogs, you know, Alexis Davis and GPPs. You know, to me, it's just like, what is the upside? You know, even Ashley Yoder, I know I talked about her as a cash game consideration, but GPPs, we want upside. We want them to win, that sort of thing. And while anything could happen in this high variance game, it's just it's a probabilities thing. I want to just, you know, take chances relative to based on what I think is more likely based on probabilities, things like that. So yeah, with Munoz, you know, I'm favoring Rivera to win. I think he probably does win, but with Munoz, you got a guy who I think he him winning this fight would mean that he probably hurts Rivera along the way, and that could lead to a finish. We've seen Rivera rocked in many fights against Piotr Jan, Aljamain Sterling, Munoz the first time, Marlon Morris. Munoz is dangerous. I know that he went 5 rounds with Edgar and didn't really hurt him, but Munoz does damage to the body. He's got very good low kicks. He pressures. He's aggressive. Like, I wouldn't be shocked to see Munoz win. I wouldn't be shocked to see him rock Rivera, and that leads to him winning rounds. Again, I'm still favoring Rivera, so I'm only going to have so much exposure to Munoz just because I think the most likely thing is Rivera wins. But again, it's a probability thing. I like to make a lot of lineups. I like to, not be married to one lineup and just say this is the only lineup that I want to ride with, because I just feel like it's, not the best way for me to approach a tournament slate. I just feel like by diversifying lineups that I feel strong about, I'm putting myself in the best chance to win. Got to set myself up to win. It's just for us to just, sit there and make one lineup and say, this is the only lineup I'm going to ride with. I mean, it's nice when it hits. I mean, if you get 6 of 6, that's great. But I mean, it's just, as we've seen time and time again, it is so hard to predict every single fight right on the card. I mean, it's very hard to do. We could go out here and do all the research, do our best job, and we all do. But at the end of the day, it is very hard to have a perfect, 12 of 12, get all your predictions right, or however many predictions are on the card, right? So again, that's kind of where I'm at. I want to spread my exposure. I want to make sure that I'm getting all the right combinations, all the fighters that I trust, could win, could put up a big score, and make sure I'm having an adequate amount of exposure everywhere I want to. Just again, so I'm putting myself in the best chance to win. So with that, let's take it on the flip side. GPP favorites. Well, actually, yeah. So GPP favorites, but I'm going to start off with a fight where it's a pick 'em. Alonzo Menifield and William Knight. This is a fight where they could both fatigue. They both have very big muscles, so muscles require oxygen. So just naturally, you're going to get tired as the fight progresses. But there's also a chance that this fight finishes. I think they're both very raw. On the feet, particularly, Knight leaves his chin high. We know Menifield hits very hard. And on the ground, Menifield, his defensive grappling is shaky. We've seen him get his back taken by Devin Clark. We've seen him controlled on the Contender Series by Daniel Jolly. I've seen him get controlled in the clinch by Vinicius Bojea. It's not like Knight can't win this fight. I think that most likely Menifield is able to keep the fight standing just based off the takedown defense that he showed against Clark. But Knight, it's a fight where it's like high variance, because if Knight happens to just end up on top of Menifield, whether it's just athletes physically imposes himself and is able to just kind of throw Menifield on the ground and gets in top position, he could probably keep him there for the rest of the round. I wouldn't be shocked. Knight does know, basic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fundamentals. He knows to sink in the hooks if presented the back. He knows to advance position when in top position, and he will look for the submission. We saw that in his Contender Series, or his not only his Contender Series. He has the hard ground and pound that he showed there, but he showed the submission particularly at the end of round 2 against Alexa Kamor. So it is a high variance, volatile fight. I think on the feet, Menifield is live to get a knockout, but on the ground, Knight is live to dominate and maybe get a stoppage. So it is a fight I'm interested in. It's not like, this fight want to go all in on 150 out of 150 lineups. I want one or the other. No, but it is one of the more intriguing fights for me to target for tournaments. Minus 260 doesn't go the distance. I'm interested. I am interested. Again, there is a chance that they both fatigue. The fight, ends up not being a big score, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. I'm willing to take these chances because at the end of the day, nothing spectacular was made in the comfort zone, right? I mean, you could ask like all the DraftKings guys, when they won their big paydays, with their lineups, they said that these lineups that they did it with, they were uncomfortable making them. These weren't like their quote unquote best lineups, the lineups that they felt best about when constructing 150 of them, multiple of them. It's kind of that weird lineup that you put together where you're like, I don't know how this thing's going to do. I don't think this thing's going to do very good. And it's just, again, the variance kind of propels you to the top of the leaderboard. So again, I always encourage myself to take risks, to take chances, to step outside my comfort zone. And that just puts me in the best chance to win long-term, I believe. Whoops. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, I got to trust the process. And we are moving on. So those are the favorites that I like, but also I like one other guy in this card in particular. And I don't think he's going to be sneaky, but Ronnie Lawrence, at 8,600, this guy's a takedown machine. And especially with DraftKings' new scoring system, helping the grapplers, rewarding them for not only the takedowns, but the top control. Ronnie Lawrence landed 12 takedowns on his Contender Series appearance. And I've seen a lot of sharp people on him on Twitter, and I get it. I think he does go out there and take down Vince Cachero at will. We saw Cachero taken down several times by Jamal Emmers in his UFC debut. Emmers was able to advance in dominant position. That wasn't the only fight, though, but even on the regional scene, he was taken down and he gave up a lot of position. Like I say, Lawrence is an aggressive wrestler. He could take you down from the body lock. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. He can threaten a bit on the ground in terms of his submission grappling. So there's enough potential with Lawrence where I'm interested in him for DraftKings. I don't think the most likely thing is he goes out there and finishes, but like guys such as Ricky Simone, Merab Dvalishvili, Colby Covington, why do we like all these guys? Well, even though maybe they don't finish every fight, well, they just fight it at a crazy high pace. And that's what Lawrence is. That's exactly what he does. And he has the cardio to do it for 3 rounds. So the upside with Lawrence is just too big for me to ignore. And that's why I like him on DraftKings. I even think he's okay for cash too, to be honest, at his price point with his floor if he wins, just due to all the takedowns and control time and whatnot, and maybe even a finish. But yeah, he's just another guy that I do want exposure to. He's a risk I'm willing to take. He's somebody that's jumping out at me for GPPs. I do hear a lot of people, it is a trickier card for GPPs. We could see a lot of the ownership just focused a lot on, Ankalaev and Gane, and I get it. And it's hard for me to argue that those two guys are the best plays, but I'm not too interested in rostering fighters like, Jimmy Rivera or Mayra Bueno Silva, just because I don't really see any grappling upside there. I think that if they win, it's going to be like a striking based decision most likely. So it's not something I'm too interested in. Same thing with Dustin Jacoby at 8,500. Again, I got to take my chances somewhere. I got to prioritize some fighters more than others. And again, I just like some other fighters more than these particular fighters like Jacoby, like Bueno Silva, like Rivera. It's not to say that they can't go out there and put up a big score, but when I'm researching these fights, when I'm looking at the odds, I think the most likely thing if they win is they go out there and just win sort of a striking based decision. So it's a risk I'm willing to take by being underweight to them. Of course, when making 150 lineups, I'm going to have some exposure to these fighters, but again, going to be underweight, definitely going to be monitoring my exposure. And that'll pretty much do it for the card. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is the DraftKings breakdown. Like I said off the top, I actually did a FanDuel breakdown, but I actually do a written breakdown for that for RotoWire. Shout out to RotoWire. Really happy to be contributing to them. But that is out there. That is on the website. That's good to go. This is good to go. You guys had a lot of content for this week for me. So you had the breakdown that I did with John Kelly on this very YouTube channel. We released that on Monday. Then you had the breakdown that I did by myself solo on Wednesday. That got released in the morning. And then you've got this. And I think I'm going to actually release another video prior to the card taking place on sort of like last minute thoughts like I did last week. Just, some stuff happened during the week, something happened at weigh-ins, et cetera, et cetera. Just want to get on here and talk about fights as much as I can. Like I said on Twitter, I want to get on here and be all in on the YouTube game, right? I want to just contribute to YouTube as much as I can, as I think I'm served well here. So I want to thank you guys so much for the support. If you haven't already, please feel free to give a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Feel free to leave a comment if you want to. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck in the event and take care.